Greetings, friends. Somebody asked us to do a video on bigotry, on tolerance. And boy, this is a big subject because this is a powerful, powerful force.
Oh yeah.
Not just in our culture, but in our personal lives.
Definitely. And it's heavy too.
Oh yeah.
When I hear those words, I feel, ugh.
It brings up a lot of emotions for people. We tend to, if we do harbor judgments, we tend to strongly defend those judgments.
Yes.
And attach our egos to those judgments about other people.
Yeah. And I feel as though in some situations, we actually already have a neural pathway burned. And so even if we're thinking, oh, I'd love to change my way of looking at it, it's like, follows the pathway, follows the pathway.
Yeah. It's, that's maybe a good place to start. And I'll say this video probably has to have two parts. The one is going to be about our judgment of others, but also then about what we do when we are being judged. But, you're speaking to this being very ingrained. This is in our neural pathways. We've been brought up with it. We're going to come back to aliens quite often. But you could imagine if aliens came down, they could look at us and they might separate us out on any number of traits, like people that have big front teeth versus people that don't, or people that have a certain color hair, or people that are bald or not bald.
Right.
And we could look at any trait, and because our minds are so good at finding patterns, we could probably find that people with big teeth, they all tend to be like this. And people with smaller teeth all tend to be like this. And we could start to divide those people up into good or bad. It's,
essentially it comes down to drawing lines. And we draw lines with everything. Even though this is obviously a deeper subject, there aren't really lines. We put lines around things, and we have to some degree, so we can communicate. However, in actuality, there aren't the lines that we think there are. However, as we grow up, certain ideas that we have, oh my gosh, you guys, they might not even be your ideas, because they might be the culture's ideas. They might be what your parents believe, or even what your parents' taught them.
Yeah.
Or so your mind and thoughts may not be your own.
This is where we're talking more broadly about judgment in general. Judgment owns us. Yes, our minds draw lines. They are very, very good at it, and it's what allows us to group things and to categorize our knowledge. A lot of what we have done as human beings is due to that ability for us to draw lines. But lines, we can use those lines intelligently and creatively for our own good. Or those lines can use us because we forget that we're the line drawers.
It's like a cell phone, right?
Okay.
I mean, we're most likely, those of us that have cell phones are not going to stop using our cell phones. However, it's the same thing. Do we use the cell phone, or does it use us? How much are we chained to it? It's the same thing with the judgments. And it can be judgments about other people, and it can be judgments about if the weather's nice, how I feel that, I'm doing as a person. There's all those different ways. We will make judgments. That's what we do. It's part of what keeps us going and keeps us knowing that we're safe or not safe, is all the judgment. The question is, how do we use the judgment? What place does it have in our life?
So if I'm coming along and I see somebody with purple skin, and then there's that well-worn path, and it says, oh, purple skin person.
They always smell like grapes.
Okay? Because in a way, I mean, we're using these silly examples, but in a way, it's that serious and that silly.
It's
right?
Equally silly.
We have chosen, black people, white people. First of all, my skin is not white. It's like pink. I'm a pinky. Okay?
Yes.
I'm not a whitey. And my skin has all these little dots on it. My skin is very different than your skin. And if you look at black skin, it comes in this whole range of beautiful shades, right? And there's no really line. If you set up a line from black to white on this side, there's going to be a gradient. It's not a line. Like night and day. Very clear. There's night, there's day.
Right.
But if you camp outside, if you actually go outside, as that shifts, you find, where's the line between those? There's no clear line. And that starts to question then, is night and day really as black and white as it seems to be? So there's that purple person.
Yes.
And my mind might have these grooves because these are cultural artifacts. We've been trained into this. And there's my judgment. It comes out. Am I going to be owned by that judgment? Do I believe that judgment? Or can I see, oh yeah, there's that old groove worn in, and I can start to draw a new groove.
Right. I love the thought about the awareness. I feel like that's key. I am having a judgment, and it's the same judgment I almost always have. And then there's a choice. Just noticing it is the first thing. Maybe you're already too far down the line and you've made the final judgment. But what if you pause and you say, okay, I've made this judgment, and now I'm going to ask myself, is this what I believe? And get curious. Because if you see, alien person with purple skin or what have you, and you make that judgment, essentially you are making a generalization. And we've talked about generalization before.
Oh yeah.
Generalization, it can't see clearly. It's just like it does this little narrow tunnel vision. So what is the truth? Maybe you've had bad experiences in the past. Does that make this one purple person the same as all the others? And that's where we have to get curious.
Yeah, curious. That is a life-saving skill out here in the woods, right? Monks taking on challenges. You get trapped into generalization, you get trapped into judgment. You no longer see opportunity.
Very true.
You no longer see what's actually there. You're only seeing your imagination, the fantasy in your head. But when we can look out and we can be curious, then the world opens up. And that is the fact about every single human on the planet, is that they are a storybook. And often pretty interesting storybook. Any single human that you want to talk to. But when I look at a person and I look at their clothing, or I look at their skin, or I look at their religion, and I make a judgment that they are not worthy of my attention, I've closed that book for myself.
Yes.
And I then no longer have access to part of that world.
Yeah.
I've just entered into fantasy land. All I'm doing is looking at my fantasy. I can no longer see reality.
And I want to say that this is coming up, we often make it so that we only see what we want to see. We only believe. So if you see this person that let's say, and you have this judgment about them, that they are selfish, they're, absorbed only in the things that interest them, and you notice, oh wow, if they're like volunteering for whatever cause, you might, in your mind, decide, oh well, they're just doing that so that they can get attention and everybody will think that they're so special. And it's interesting to note, and I'm just throwing out there, try once and notice how often do we have a judgment or we see something and it's maybe only what we want to see and we don't ask the deeper questions.
So I think it's almost, as we look at this in ourselves, it's almost, do we want to just live in our own head, in our own world? And if so, what is that bringing us? If I am sitting at home on my couch, hating a group of people, spending a lot of energy just sitting on my couch, hating people, right?
It's a definite energy suck.
Yeah.
It could not be people. It could be like, oh, I hate this food, or I hate this thing that's about to happen to me, or all the judgments that we make. Is it valuable? Is it a helpful judgment? Does it lead you to feeling healthy, to feeling like you're your best self. Because you get a choice every time you make any kind of judgment. You get a choice, right? Maybe you don't get a choice of what the initial pop-up window is. Blink, weep, weep, weep. I hate grapefruit. However, what you decide to do from there, if you decide to believe that, if you're going to follow the instructions in that pop-up window, that's your choice every single time.
In a way, this is really basic stuff. You know, our culture has become infantile almost, in the sense that we learn to walk, right? We learn to spell, but often we don't learn one of the most basic things about life, and that is that we get to choose our response to a stimulus, right? And we just take the reactions given to us, and we make those into our automatic reactions to stimuli. But you, me, you, we all have a choice, and we can change that. We can change that so that we respond instead of react. Basic human nature. And it's life-changing when we do it, because when we sit there on the couch and we hate, we're poisoning ourselves. You know, not just our mind, but we literally,
Yes.
you're releasing
Oh, yeah.
chemicals that are affecting your physiology and are going to be degrading your health. I mean, that is the way the body works. You sit and you stew about negative things. It is not healthy. It's called stress. And it's as bad as smoking cigarettes constantly all day long. It is not good for you.
So, do you want to reframe? That's the question. Do you want to pull this up? You see, boop, boop, it's happening. I'm aware. Do you want to get curious? Do you want to reframe what your judgment is? Do you want to be exploratory? Because guess what? You don't have to change the way you feel. If you want to have an idea that grapefruits are awful and all grapefruits suck, that's fine. You can't necessarily say for certain all grapefruits suck. If you don't eat grapefruit, you can't necessarily know that that's true. However, if that's the decision you want to make, it is your life and
We're all
your
free to,
decision to
right?
make.
Yeah.
But maybe you want to reframe it. Maybe you can say, well, I tried that grapefruit and that one's not for me today. And
Then you end up discovering some really good variety of grapefruit that you love.
Yes.
And it adds to your life. So you're right, we have this choice, and it's up to us. But it's good for the world, and it's good for us as we step out of that automatic reaction to stimuli.
It's going to be harder if you're in a group of people who don't want you to be curious or to ask questions or to say, I'm not sure that this is really my actual judgment or belief. It may be a lot harder, but I would encourage you to still explore, to still ask questions. And maybe that group of people isn't right for you. Maybe they all want to be that way too, and you're the one that is the spearhead for change. There's all sorts of options of things that could happen. But remember, you have an inner strength in you. And no one even has to know if you're asking questions and being curious right away. Eventually, if you do it enough, you'll want to make the changes, and the changes will become the new automatic pop-up window.
Yeah, that's a good point. Our continued responses then become our new reaction. So you can even form that, condition yourself. Groups.
I think we've done something on groups at one point.
It's powerful. You know, in that group mind, we start to identify ourselves, and the group identifies itself with the ideas instead of with the people inside the group. And then it becomes a blind following.
We stop asking questions, stop being curious, stop wondering, is this actually really the truth, and is this really how I feel?
And that doesn't matter if it's a racial supremacy group, if it's a religious group, if it's whatever kind of group it is.
Only
usually,
people who hate grapefruits?
There's an outside the group.
Yeah.
And that's where that judgment
I've
comes
got to
alive.
come back to aliens again.
Okay.
And say that to remember in the end that we are all from this one planet. And sometimes.
Not everybody believes that, but
Well, okay.
But
absolutely. See,
probably.
there's a judgment. I just had a judgment. Most likely, all the people I have met so far, we're here.
We're all Earthlings.
This is us.
Right? We're all dwelling on this planet together.
Yeah. I mean, that in and of itself, what a beautiful thing.
And that can be a coming together, right? Just realizing you know, if you were taken off onto another planet and then you came back to Earth, 30 years later, you'd probably just want to come back, if just you could get back to Earth anywhere.
Right.
And see any other human being.
Right.
You would be kin with them.
Yes.
Right? When we're kin with things, wow. At any rate, there's the flip side of this. Mm-hmm. Because the reality is there's a lot of people out there who are judging. And, and there's a lot of us, a lot of the people watching, that you're probably coming under you're probably being judged. Yeah. Because all of us usually are. It might be because you're a woman. It might be because this color of your skin is brown, black, whatever you want to call it. Might be that you game all the time and people think that you're blah 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 because you game all the time.
You're too fat, you're too skinny, your hair is too long, it's too short, it's too curly, it's too straight, it's like ad infinitum.
And usually I feel like we want to rail against this. This isn't me. Well, how can you judge me just based on my hair or my clothes or whatever it's going to be? Our labels become something we identify with. So first of all, we have to look and see, are we identifying with a label that sets us apart and thus creating a rift by saying, okay, I am different than these other human beings and I'm different in such a way, because of course we're all different, but we can think of that in a positive sense, or I can think of that as I'm different and I'm assuming judgment by other people, and then I'm going to push against, this group that I sense or I feel is pushing back.
Right, it's setting up conflict. And it doesn't have to be people and people. It's anything that we have a relationship with. If the judgment isn't open for questions, we begin to create a push somewhere within that.
So I can have a label I put onto myself. I can even wear it proudly. But the same thing happens. If I identify myself with that label, it's a lot like looking at somebody's skin and creating a judgment. I'm not allowing myself to be outside of that labeling context. And then when somebody wants to encounter me as just a fellow human being, I want to say, no, I'm not just a fellow human being. I am XYZ. Can we see how this kind of...
It can definitely create it.
It sets differences, and it starts to say, we're not all kin. Our differences are more important than our kinship. What if our kinship came first, and then we celebrated our differences?
So what about you feel like you are a nice person, you are friendly and open, you're a woman and you're feeling like unfairness in the workplace, or maybe it truly is actual,
sexual harassment or whatever it's going to be. There is stuff going on.
What can I do if I'm just like, I do want to be in kinship with everything.
And that is where I think when we are judged, we really have to step up. Because if here's the judger, and here's the person being judged, right? I'm going to use gaming for an example.
Okay.
And this person says, gamers are just like mindless robots and they're emotionally defunct. And then here comes this gamer and I say, you're just an emotionally defunct gamer. And the gamer's like, well, screw you. You don't know anything about it. And it's like, see? It perpetrates that in the judger's mind when we react. So the key is that if we're being judged, we have we have a really important duty. And that is not to accept that judgment, right? We don't want to just say, okay, I'm going to bow down under this. But it's not to react back. It's to be our best selves and begin to show people by example that those judgments are not correct. We're not going to change the judger by shouting at them and telling them they're wrong. We're not going to change the judger by hitting them or attacking them. We're not going to change the judger by holding up signs outside their business. They're going to be in there going like, ugh, see those people? I hate them even more. And I box them even more. Speaking out against this is an art form. And it's a huge responsibility. And it's hard to do because when you're being judged, you're in a hurtful place.
Very much and vulnerable.
You want to
so
hit back.
much. Yeah.
Or you want to hide.
Or you want some retribution.
Retribution, yeah. And,
yeah, it really calls us out to try to walk that path of being our best self. Incredibly difficult, but also very growth oriented. And it is not to forget an example for other people who are experiencing the same thing, instead of shouting and all of the things that we were talking about. An example of someone who is informing other people in a way that connects and draws people together. Anytime you choose that, you are giving hope to other people. You are setting an example of something, a route another person can take. And that, I feel like, at least for me, is extremely rewarding.
this is about making real change. I mean, if we want to make real change in our world, it can't be tolerance. Now, we've had, the civil rights movement, and we've had some huge movements that were angry and outspoken, and they've made changes in our culture, right? As far as who can have what job, and more equal pay, and not segregated bathrooms, but there's still so much judgment, right? There's still so much hate. Because we've been dealing with the symptoms. We haven't been dealing with the underlying cause. And to change the judger, we have to not judge the judger. And I'm careful when I say this, because there's violence being waged, there's sexual harassment and assault. By all means, then it is time to not just take this more gentle role.
Right.
But if I judge the judger, I've put them aside, and they cannot be changed. They become solid in my mind. They are no longer worthy of me trying to positively affect as the person that's being judged. It's not fair that the person that's being judged has to be put in this role, but it isn't fair. That's what the civil rights movement had to be. Was, people were viewed as black, they were put down, shut down. They had to come up and rise up and say, hey, there's got to be changes. Now, it's not just about black, white, sexual preference, religion. It's judgment as a human quality, right? We've been accepting this in ourselves and in others for so long, but it's time to change it. It's time to change it, because we're growing into a world where that judgment, it's going to create havoc that is so overwhelming that we can't recover from it.
It can, just a single act of judgment and other actions that come from that judgment, that circles around the world in, an hour. And the ripple effect is so much more exponential. And the ripple effect can be the opposite side of the coin. Your choice to look and say, oh, I'm aware, I'm having a judgment, or I'm being judged, and then deciding, I'm going to respond differently than I always have, or I'm going to examine this and explore this. That also has a ripple effect. And if more and more of us are doing that, we are then, rippling across each other.
So can we come together? Can we start to see each other as kin? Can we see what judgment does to ourselves? See what it does to others? And can we start to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery? Can we emancipate ourselves from these judgments, unexamined, put into our minds, that are owning us? And what kind of world can we create? Because this is it, folks. Here we are on this planet. We have the chance now, we have the opportunity to destroy this planet at any time.
And ourselves.
Right? And ourselves.
Actually, we probably are more likely to destroy each other, and the planet will go on going, whew. Thankfully they went and hit the self-destruct button.
But we don't have to go that route. We have the power. Like, right now. All of us could right now make the decision. We're going to come together as kin. We're not going to be putting each other down anymore, right? We're going to help each other out. We're going to lend hands. We're going to love each other.
Yeah.
This opportunity is before us, and this is the moment. So, join us. Share in the comments your thoughts, your ideas. I know this is kind of more radical stuff, and I'm sure it's brought up some emotions for some people. Yeah. But share, and let's come together in that sharing. Love to you all. Talk with you soon.